Judge Celia Castro. And one of the reasons why I asked you, Donna Cosper, our wonderful producer, connected us up and said that, and told me that you were the first female Hispanic judge in Austin. And your entire journey through this time of great segregation into integration, into female empowerment, and the journey. And so those are the things that I want to talk with you about. So welcome, Celia.
Thank you.
How
I'm happy to be here.
Listen, tell me a little bit about, in your journey, you went to the first integrated junior high school in Austin at that time. Could you talk about that experience and what that was like? What was going on at that time? What year was that?
I started in 1963, and back then junior high was three years, so 63 to 66.
That was that would have been 7th, 8th, and 9th, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't know any better. We didn't know that we were, quote, an experiment.
Yes.
That the Austin Independent School District and UT kind of collaborated and said we're going to bring kids from all over Austin and put them together. And this was, again, before busing, which I think occurred in 1970 or 71. And it just clicked. It was just a magical time. We had a wonderful time, and we're involved in all kinds of clubs, and I don't think it's been seen like that since. It was just a really magical time.
What an amazing experience to be able to go through that. Because did you feel the separation before then? Did you feel like that there were separated communities? Did you understand the Latinos and the African Americans and that there were these separated communities?
Oh yes, yes. Because I lived when I was small on the east side, and
now the east side of Austin, for people that don't know, this was the Hispanic side, right?
Right, but also the blacks
yes.
too, on certain streets.
Yes.
But even that was kind of segregated. It was
Yep.
Very
separated, very segregated during that time. And so then you participated in that, and this was an eye-opening experience for you,
right.
And a heart-opening experience for you.
Right, and when I was about 5, my father moved us to. We were still on the east side, but more of an Anglo area. So I went to primarily Anglo elementary school, and I still didn't quite feel like I fit in.
Yep.
So when I went to JH, it was great.
How wonderful.
It was great.
And so then you, when we were talking earlier, then you went into a practice and because you wanted to be an advertising copywriter, right? I mean, this is what you did after you got your degree in English?
Yes.
Now, your mother was a teacher, right?
My mother was a teacher.
But she wasn't allowed to teach?
One of the first teachers here in Austin. Now, when she graduated from college, they would not hire her here. She actually started in Del Rio, Texas.
Yes.
That's where she began her teaching career. And then she moved back to Austin and then was only allowed to work part-time. They would not give her a full-time teacher status until one of her principals just said, "This is ridiculous," and he went to bat for her, and so she became.
And so they broke the barrier there, and they were able to do that.
Right.
How wonderful. And did she teach you, was that a formative part of yours, seeing her struggle and overcome?
Well, I guess at the point when I was born, I didn't see that initial struggle, but I know I did see when she was just part-time and her frustration that she wasn't allowed to be full-time.
And you graduated with a degree in English.
Yes.
And then you went as an advertising copy. You thought you wanted to do advertising copy,
yes,
and this is because you were a writer, right? I mean,
I wanted to be a writer. Yes, I definitely leaned that way.
And then, how did you come to law?
Well, I couldn't find any jobs in Dallas at the time. Nobody was even gonna gave me hardly a glance at my small portfolio that I dragged around with me. So I eventually found a job at Travel Host. It's a magazine that's in hotels, and
Yes.
my boss there, she realized that I liked to write, so she did let me copyright a couple of times. But then my older sister told me, well, you should come back to Austin and talk with some of my friends there in law school. Maybe that's something you might want to be interested in.
Yeah.
So I came back, talked to them. They convinced me to take the LSAT, which I did. And I think I told you at the time it had math on it, which really hurts my brain. And I was had a horrible headache when I left the test.
Yes.
But then months later, I found out that yes, I was accepted into UT, which surprised me. And I was like, okay, I'll try it.
So here you are. Now, you don't come from an attorney's background. There are not a lot of attorneys in your
No, there was
office,
never
and a
an
lot
attorney.
of people that are in law school come from that background. So
Exactly.
you were telling me it was like a different language.
Right. It was like a foreign language, all the terminology. And I was going, oh dear, did I make a mistake?
Yeah. But you struggled through and you were able to
I
make it
struggled
through.
through. I struggled through. I did enjoy my internships,
Yes.
as I told you.
Well,
Had some
tell me
wonderful
about your internships, because I don't. I'd love for the audience to learn what were your internships like, and what were you doing? Because you traveled around, you worked with the Indian tribes, and you did.
I had an internship on the Navajo Reservation with the DNA Legal Services, and there was really no accommodations in Window Rock, so we had to stay at Fort Defiance and live in a trailer park. So, but it helped with the consumer law issues. And then on the weekends, we traveled around all the interns that were stationed in different areas around the two states, Arizona and New Mexico, and would hike around areas which I never hiked before in my life. That was an eye-opening experience.
Were you surprised at the indigenous tribes and what their lifestyle was like, and learning what their points of view was? And did this inform you?
Well, yes, but I felt a strange kinship, and it's funny you should ask that because I sent off for my Ancestry.com
Yes.
results. Came back 46% Native American. So I said,
Yes.
I know I felt some kinship there.
I find that interesting because, when I tell people that I'm Mexican, and they say, you don't look Mexican, and I say, you don't understand. Mexican is not a nationality.
Exactly.
There are the whitest of white to the blackest of black Mexicans. Mexican is, and what we're talking about is when we talk about the brown skin, we're talking about the influence of the indigenous populations that were here, and that's what we're talking about. Aren't we talking about the Indian influence? That's what the real term means when we're talking about the discrimination. We're talking about this that's going on, isn't it? Celia?
Right. And the results showed the indigenous from all of North America down to parts of South America, and then centered in on San Luis Potosi area of Mexico and South Texas.
Yes.
So it was interesting.
How,
And then 12% French, which I had to think about that for a minute.
Well, the French were here.
That's
the
right.
French were here. My family's
Yes.
French. They were French from Mexico, so you can see that. Okay, cousins. So
Spain.
here we. So now you hung out your shingle.
Yes, I decided
But
to do that.
then you had an opportunity to be a judge and to become the first female municipal judge in Austin, a Latina judge in Austin. Tell me about that experience.
Well, I was pretty involved in politics at the time, and one of my friends was an associate judge there at Austin Municipal Court.
Yes.
And he told me they were having some openings for relief judges, people that would step in and substitute for the other judges if they weren't able to serve that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, okay. I'll put my hat in the ring and just lobbied for the position. And so I became a part-time judge at first, a relief judge.
And
And
so
it
what
took me,
was it like sitting on the bench your first time where you come, when you walk up there and you're in the run, you, here how do you prepare for that?
I'm not sure you do. It's a lot of OJT on the job training. And so you kind of second guess yourself at first, but as you get your sea legs, as it were, I think you begin to filter out and get down to the nitty gritty.
So
And
what makes a good judge? What were the qualities that you began to develop and manifest and learn as you're growing there, Celia?
I think the most important thing is to listen to people, to their stories and whatever their situation was, to at least listen to them, let them listen to their voice, because a lot of other judges, not everybody, but because we had a lot of cases, so
Of course.
it was like, you just had to keep going, but just to take out a few minutes and listen to where they're coming and see if you could come to a situation where you could assist them in some way, as much as you could under the law.
How wonderful that you're willing to take that time. And did you watch your skills develop over the years? Did you feel like that you became a better judge and you were more able to, and I love the way you phrased that, about that you were able to be of assistance to them, because you're meeting people at when some of their worst days.
Right. Yes, I think as the years went on, I could, fine tune
Yeah.
the situations.
Your political views. Did you want to run for office? Were any of these, or do you more prefer being in the background? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because now you're getting back into, you want to get back into some of the boards and some of the work that you're doing, right? Is that at this time in your life?
About getting back to the boards,
Yeah.
or running for office.
Either,
Well,
both.
I
Talk
did. I
about
did
them.
run. I did run.
Yes.
County court at law back in '88. I'm trying to remember the year.
Yes. What was that
And it
experience
was not
like?
successful, but it was very. I had a lot of fun actually, and I had a lot of stamina back then. A lot more stamina than I do now, but it was
Don't
great.
we all, right?
It was great. It was great, and I really appreciated the support that I had, and a lot of people that my mom was still alive at the time, and so a lot of the Becker, she taught at Becker neighborhood, they would put up posters and signs, yard signs, and it was great.
So what did you learn about yourself during that experience and of running for political office and asking for help and doing that?
That if you had to go, you just had to go for it. You just had to take a chance
Yeah.
and go for it.
And so what are you doing now? What is your what is your perspective now? What's in your windshield?
Well, I'm a visiting judge now for the county. So
And what does
I do
that
that.
mean?
I also substitute for the presiding justice of the peace in the different precincts around Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And precinct 1 is basically my home base, so I go there often, but I've gone to precinct 3, precinct 4. And so you substitute,
Yes.
preside over the dockets, whatever it may be. And justice of the peace are more civil cases, as opposed to where I was at municipal court, which was more criminal
Right.
cases.
In the criminal cases, you had to do the entire spectrum, right? I mean, I get as much as I know from law and things like Law and Order and saying, but you have to do the entire case where somebody comes in and asks for a warrant.
Well, the police officers would be coming in.
Come in and ask for a warrant.
Search warrant
And
or arrest
do you have
warrants.
to question them and say whether or not this is whether or not this is a legal warrant and push back against them?
Well, you read it, and if it's not meeting the requirements, sorry, I can't. I'm not signing it.
Yeah.
So
Is that
yes,
hard to
happened.
say no? Is it hard to?
It got easier.
Yeah.
So that was just one aspect,
Yeah.
dealing with the warrants, and then of course you had your dockets, and then you had arraignment, which was actually reading the prisoners their rights, and setting bail,
Yep.
bond amounts. That could be tricky.
Tell me about bail, because bail seems to me to be a real evolving process right now. We're trying to learn how do we do this? How do we handle bail when somebody who has money is able to get out and somebody who doesn't has to stay in? How can we do this in a more fair way?
Well, I just relying back on what occurred when I was there. You have to see what their criminal history was, and if they had any other offenses, and if they were, and what the type of offense it was, because could be very critical.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a nonviolent offense,
Sure.
and they haven't had any offenses, that's pretty easy. But if it's family violence, that's another issue.
That's a very
It
tough
can be
one,
very,
isn't it?
very tricky, and
Yeah.
fraught with danger there.
Yes, and in order to be able to in order to be able to keep someone and to keep people safe, because that's some very difficult issues. So you're involved with with the Hispanic women and seeing the empowerment. Are you seeing some changes and some positive young role models that you see that are growing out
Oh yes,
that you're connecting?
it's so much more than when I was starting in the legal field, and well, other fields too. It's just amazing how many Chicanas, Latinas
Yes.
are rising up in the ranks.
Isn't that
And
exciting to see?
right, and I think a lot of it, and I was expressing earlier, a lot of support came from being in certain organizations. I know that I was involved in the Mexican American Business and Professional Women of Austin, called MAPWA, from, I think, college. And I was considered the baby at the time, one of the younger ones. But the founder, Martha Cotera, is a dear, dear friend and mentor. She's wonderful. She's so active in the community. If you know anything about the Austin community, Martha Cotera is there at the forefront.
Yes.
And so through the years, that kind of gradually, I was a president of that group at one point, and then gradually later morphed kind of into Hispanic Women's of Austin and Hispanic Women's of Texas, and then an organization that I'm associated with too is Las Comadres para las Americas, and that was founded by Dr. Nora Comstock,
Yes.
who is now currently trustee for Austin Community College, which, shout out, you should have on your show,
Yes.
because
Oh, she sounds wonderful.
it's a great organization, kind of loosely internet-based, and it's actually international. And
I
so
love that.
it's got different aspects of it, so I can't really talk, that'd be a whole
But
hour.
Las Comadres, I was thinking about that, about how that the way to raise the Latino voice is through abuelita power. That much of the power within the families that I know goes through the grandmother. Mm-hmm. That the grandmother is the focus to get people and to get people rolling, to get people involved, to get people. Do you see that as a?
Well, some of the people started, they're now grandmothers.
Yes.
So, yes, so they're the abuelas. So anyway, back to Las Comadres. There's so many different facets of it, but
Yes.
we meet once a month. We can meet once a month in North Austin, South Austin, Central Austin. It's just a sharing of ideas, networking. It's just kind of endless.
God, that sounds
And
like
then
a wonderful organization. I think absolutely I want to know.
Right, and they post things on the internet about job opportunities, community organizing, just a plethora of ideas.
When you look out over the where we are in 2019 with the immigration and the detention that is going on, It just breaks my heart.
It's
Is
awful.
this the best we could possibly do? What are we looking at? How do you approach it? How do you look at it? How do you see that there can be some peace come out of this?
I don't see any peace yet until some policies are overturned, whatever that's going to take. But it's just cruel. It's a flashback to years past,
Exactly.
and it's just terrifying to me what's going on, and it's just not right.
Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk with you about. I mean, how can we find some way to have comprehensive immigration reform so that we understand that this line that we have in between us is artificial, it's man-made. We're all in this together. We've got to figure out a way to be able to expand economic development in Central America so that there is more reasons why people want to stay and want to do. There seems to be a good interest in us making those kinds of peaceful and initiatives.
Right. Well, first of all, we don't need to be making enemies of countries that can help in that
Exactly.
respect. I mean, that would be one of the things. And it's so funny because I remember when you could just cross the border, you could just walk across the border. There was nobody stopping, and you go back and forth.
Exactly. And
Nothing
and people worked and had
there was nothing strange about it.
yeah. Yeah, and so we've got to see how this in 2019 and beyond, just exactly how it is that we can grow together. You know, this is the thing is that there is more that unites us
Right.
than divides us, and that's where I think organizations like you're talking about, Comadres de las Americas,
Para las Americas.
para las Americas. God, that just sounds like such a wonderful, such a wonderful. The idea of the comadre,
Yes.
which is like the compadre, right? This is the comadre is the female.
Female.
Yeah, and so this is where we're watching a lot of opportunities to where women are now assuming roles that are of equal. You and I were talking about how when we were growing up, the different roles were segregated. That the men's roles and the women's roles, women's were
Right.
maybe a teacher or a nurse or a secretary.
Right.
And now we're seeing women at all different levels now.
Yes.
It's a very
I'm all for it.
it's a much more much more needed and much more exciting time. So how does this look through your daughter's eyes?
Well, I'm hoping that this continues as far as the progression and advancement of Latinas. I'm just still kind of worried about the political landscape
Yes.
and how that will affect.
It goes up and down. But isn't that what it is that we have to keep diligent? I mean, you know,
yes.
this is because it's a long game. I mean, we've got to remember that it's going to require a tremendous amount of patience and focus.
Yes, and a lot of allies.
Yes. So how do you build allies, Celia? How do you do you attend meetings and caucuses and listen and talk about the process of building coalitions that you've been.
Well, I haven't been involved too much lately. Like I said, I have a full-time job and a visiting judge. But
Yes.
in the past, yes, it's to partner with other groups that have also felt discriminated against.
Right.
And just combine efforts.
And that's what you're doing now. Is that your?
No, I'd like to get back to that.
That's what you're going to be going back to. And at this time, you are growing and learning. That's the exciting part about what I love about this concept of lifelong learning. is
Oh,
that we're
yes.
here. I mean, there's so much that we're getting a chance to learn and to grow. What kind of things are you curious about?
I love to explore new ideas and read. I'm a big reader.
Yes? What's on your
Okay.
night table? What are you exploring?
Well, some memoirs and then writing again,
Yes?
and just think of our book club book that we just finished was The Daughter of a Queen by Sarah Bird.
Yes, I have talked with her, and I have
Oh,
talked with her. What that book took my breath away. It was such a hard read to read the story of this buffalo soldier, this Kathy that actually was
yes.
a fictionalized version
Right.
of her. But what a story!
So I like to read
Yes.
and just
And
hear
what are
what
you
they say.
writing?
Well, I just started venturing back into trying to write more. I attended a writing workshop with Spike Gillespie, who I
Yes,
think is going to be one of your guests soon.
yes,
And so I was telling her, well, law school or the area of law kind of stunts your creativity.
yes,
So I'm trying to reclaim that.
exactly.
So
So
I'm
what are
going
you
to try to
writing
work it.
about?
Just probably life vignettes, my life, just for myself right now.
Exactly. Well, we always have to write for ourselves. A painter paints
Right,
for herself.
right,
A sculptor sculpts for herself, and then the rest of the world gets a chance to enjoy it later.
right.
But we always have to write for ourselves, right? I mean, to stay true to that.
Yes.
How great! And you're going on. Have you had the grandmother experience?
No, I'm not a grandmother.
You're not a grandmother, so you don't, other than you have others that
I was an older mommy, but
yes. And what kinds of travels are you headed for? And so and tell me in the
but
end.
mentorship.
Pardon me?
I guess as far as grandmother, I've mentored people in the past, whether it's in Toastmasters or when I was in Mapua.
Exactly.
We had a program called SIS, Project SIS, Stay in School, where our members mentored up with junior high Latanitas and
How wonderful. And to
kind
be able to
of taking
stay,
them.
to be able to learn and to get them. And did I'm so glad to know that you're a fellow Toastmaster, because Toastmasters has been such an important part of my life and growth. Did you go, have you been in Toastmasters for long?
See, I joined in 2006, I believe, or 2008. But I'm getting close to